I caught my wife cheating, rebuilt my life, and then she tried to kill my new girlfriend in a jealous rage. This is my story. I've been following Reddit for years, mostly as a silent observer. But now I finally have my own story to share. The past few months have been so chaotic that I've barely had time to process everything, let alone write about it. Now that the dust has settled and legal proceedings are complete, I can finally share what happened. Maybe my experience can help someone else avoid a similar situation. Introduction. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mason, a 34-year-old project manager at a tech company in the city. I married Evelyn when she was 31, thinking we'd spend our lives together. Those 5 years of marriage. I keep telling myself I'll never get them back, but maybe that's not the point anymore. Our marriage wasn't bad at first. We connected through a mutual friend at a tech conference, and I thought I'd struck gold. She seemed perfect smart, ambitious, with an MBA and a promising career in marketing consulting. Coming from a background with an alcoholic parent, I was hypervigilant about red flags. My father struggled with addiction, and it affected our whole family. His drinking would start at sunset and end with broken promises at dawn. So when I was dating Evelyn, I watched everything: how she handled stress, how she treated service workers, how she managed money. Basic things you should verify before committing to someone. To be completely honest, she passed every test with flying colors. She was patient, kind, and generous, everything my childhood home lacked. I thought I'd done my homework, vetted her thoroughly, and found a good person. I even remember telling my best friend Liam that I'd finally broken my family's cycle of dysfunction. Man, was I wrong about that one, but we'll get to that part later. We had a beautiful wedding in wine country, bought a modern apartment in the city, and started what I hoped would be our happily ever after. I had no idea I was about to enter a different kind of nightmare than the one I grew up with. 2 years into marriage. Around 2 years in, everything started falling apart. And I mean completely falling apart. Like clockwork, we'd have explosive arguments every month. Instead of being that couple everyone envied, we were fighting over the most ridiculous things. Unwashed coffee mugs, my late nights at the office managing project deadlines, her constant networking events, even what shows to watch on Netflix. I was working overtime to save our marriage, desperately trying to hold on to the woman who used to leave sweet notes on my laptop and plan surprise weekend getaways. How we went from that to her screaming at me for buying the wrong brand of organic coffee was beyond my comprehension. Being a project manager, I believe in fixing problems rather than abandoning them. So I suggested couples therapy. Actually, I begged for it. We made it to exactly one session, and holy hell, what a disaster that turned out to be. Evelyn's response? It's your idea, so it's your expense. So I found a highly recommended therapist who specialized in tech industry couples, scheduled all the appointments, and paid for it out of my own pocket. When the therapist started pointing out some communication issues and suggesting that Evelyn might not be handling conflict in a healthy way, she completely broke down. She accused the therapist of attacking her, called her a quack, and swore never to return. "You're trying to make me look unstable," she said, her MBA-polished exterior cracking to reveal something darker underneath. I later learned that her mentor at work, who had essentially launched her consulting career, had passed away just before our arguments intensified. Grief does strange things to people, so I tried to be understanding. But she refused to talk about it, rejected any form of help, and just kept getting angrier and more distant. Her screaming matches could wake up half our apartment building, but she never got physical or broke anything. Once, our neighbors thought someone was being murdered and called security. Evelyn was screaming at me because I had forgotten to pick up her dry cleaning on my way home from a project meeting. We eventually fell into this bizarre routine where we basically just coexisted in the same space. and occasionally had sex. Wake up, go to work, come home, eat dinner while staring at our phones, then go to bed. Rinse and repeat. The fights decreased only because we barely spoke anymore. But I was still foolishly in love with her. Pathetic, right? I kept thinking about our early days, telling myself we could get back there with enough effort. I really believed in that, for better or worse, part of our marriage vows. I guess I overlooked the fact that those vows also included forsaking all others. We'll get to that part soon enough. The discovery. Here's how it all imploded. I work at this tech company, not one of the Silicon Valley giants, but decent enough. Your typical project management role. Endless Slack messages, Zoom calls, and trying to keep development teams on deadline. The kind of job where you're not important enough for first-class flights, but important enough to travel for quarterly reviews and client meetings. I was at a tech conference in Seattle, supposed to be there for 4 days of networking and pretending to be interested in AI presentations. That's when my life decided to take a spectacular nosedive. 3 days into the conference, our company back home had a major crisis, something about a critical server crash and lost customer data. Classic tech emergency. My supervisor called everyone back early. Being the dedicated employee I am, or maybe just a fool, you decide, I booked the first flight home. I had this ridiculous, romantic idea. You know those movie scenes where the husband surprises his wife? Yeah, I actually thought that would happen. During my entire Uber ride from the airport, I planned this surprise. Stopped at this fancy florist and dropped $80 on her favorite flowers. Expensive purple orchids that she always said reminded her of our first date. Even picked up some champagne and those artisanal chocolates she loved from that boutique downtown. I thought this could be a fresh start for us. With all the distance lately, I figured this spontaneous gesture might remind her why she fell in love with me in the first place. Standing there with my chocolates and flowers, I felt like the world's best husband. When I got to our apartment building at 2 p.m., her Tesla was in the parking garage, which made sense because she worked from home on Thursdays, conducting client video calls. The apartment seemed normal at first glance, but I noticed a few odd things, like her favorite Spotify playlist playing from upstairs, the one she only played when she was in a particularly good mood. I figured maybe she was having a productive day with clients. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink. God, I was such an idiot. I was so eager to surprise her that I headed straight upstairs to our bedroom, though I could hear other sounds, and the music was getting louder. My brain wasn't processing what those sounds meant. You know, in horror movies where everyone yells at the character not to open the door? That was me. When I turned that doorknob and pushed open the door to my own bedroom, my entire world shattered into a million pieces. That 1 second transformed every happy memory, every moment of trust, every I love you into ashes. Until the day I die, I'll never forget what I saw in that bedroom. There was my wife, the woman I'd loved, supported, and built a life with for 5 years, beneath some guy from one of her client companies. In our bed. The same bed where I'd held her during anxiety attacks about work presentations, where we'd talked about having kids someday. She was acting like I didn't exist, like our marriage vows meant absolutely nothing. Not even trying to be quiet about it. The confrontation. As I stood there, completely broken, watching the flowers I'd bought scatter across our hardwood floor, they scrambled like cockroaches when the lights come on. The guy, some hotshot client from a startup she was consulting for, had the audacity to try to dart past me like I was the building doorman. And I'll never forget this. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was seeing him with my wife. Or maybe it was how he thought he could just walk away after destroying my marriage. Before I even realized what I was doing, my hand was around his throat. Not a death grip, but enough to make it clear he wasn't just walking out. Instead of punching him like you might expect, I delivered two open-handed slaps across his face, like some dramatic scene from a reality TV show. I still don't know why I didn't just punch him. But after I caught him with my wife, this guy's expression shifted from fear to rage real quick, like he was actually going to try to fight me in my own home. Can you imagine the sheer disrespect? The audacity? Evelyn probably fed him stories about being separated or single. I'm willing to bet he didn't know she was married. He probably thought I was some crazy ex-boyfriend. I let him go before things escalated further. Not because I was scared, but because I suddenly realized this pathetic excuse for a man wasn't worth an assault charge. He wasn't the one who'd made me any promises. He hadn't stood before our friends and family and vowed to love and cherish me till death do us part. He was just another guy who couldn't keep it in his pants. The real betrayer was still in that bedroom, probably calculating how to lie her way out of this situation. My entire body was shaking as I turned back to Evelyn. There she was, the woman I'd dedicated 5 years of my life to. Fumbling with her designer blouse like this was just a minor inconvenience. The purple orchids I'd bought were scattered across the floor, probably crushed under her lover's running feet. The mirror she was using to fix her hair? I'd mounted it last Christmas because she said it had better lighting. And I just stood there, watching her get ready in it, like she hadn't just destroyed our entire marriage. She was avoiding my eyes in the mirror, casually straightening her MBA perfect hair, and acting like she hadn't just shattered everything we'd built together. The aftermath. You want to know what this woman had the nerve to say to me after I literally caught her cheating? She gave me this irritated look, like I was some junior developer interrupting her client meeting, and said, "Why are you even back, Mason?" No, I'm sorry. No, I can explain. None of that basic human decency stuff. She was actually annoyed that I came home early and caught her cheating, in our bed, in the apartment where I paid most of the mortgage with my project management salary. Never in my life had I wanted to hit someone so badly. My hand was actually twitching as I remembered how satisfying it had been to slap her startup boy toy. But I just stood there, frozen, while she had the audacity to mutter under her breath, "You weren't supposed to be back." Like I should have checked her calendar for a convenient time to catch her cheating. The absolute audacity of this woman. 5 years of marriage. And this is what it meant to her. A minor hiccup in her afternoon fun. You know what's really messed up? While all this was happening, I could see our wedding photo on the nightstand. The same nightstand where she'd placed the breakfast I made her just last weekend. She'd been telling me she was too exhausted from client meetings for sex in this same room for the past 3 months, but apparently she had plenty of energy for this startup guy. Like an idiot, I stood there thinking about all the late networking events, all the client dinners, all the time she said she was meeting her marketing team. How long had this been going on? How many men had shared my bed? I was about to find out because Evelyn was nowhere near done talking. Then this woman, this absolute piece of work, went completely nuclear. Like I was the one who had just blown up our marriage. "You weren't supposed to be back," she screamed, her face getting red and blotchy, just like during our fights about my project deadlines. "This is your fault. If you had just told me you were coming home, you wouldn't have seen this." This woman deserved an Olympic gold medal for her mental gymnastics. She actually had the nerve to blame me for discovering her infidelity. The confrontation continues. But wait, it gets better. "You turned down my request for an open relationship," she screamed, like that somehow justified her actions. Yes, 6 months ago, she had asked once, during a wine-fueled discussion about her evolving career needs, and I had declined because I believed in monogamy. In her twisted logic, that apparently meant she should do it anyway. "I have needs," she continued ranting, as if I was some monster for expecting my wife to be faithful. She actually tried to justify her cheating with corporate euphemisms. I tried to handle this without impacting your emotional bandwidth. How considerate of her. Something broke inside me. 5 years of devotion, trust, and love reduced to I have needs. Every kiss, every I love you, every moment we shared was fake. My hand trembling with rage, I took 3 steps across our bedroom. I grabbed the collar of the silk blouse I'd bought her last month for a client presentation. She had hurt me, and in that moment, I wanted her to hurt too. I wanted her to feel anything close to the pain ripping through my chest. But I couldn't do it. When I saw the fear in her eyes, real, genuine fear, despite the fact she had just destroyed everything I held dear and shown me our entire marriage was a sham. That's not me. I won't be that person. I promised myself I'd never put that look on anyone's face. My alcoholic father used to make my mother look at him with that same terror. So, with my fists still clenched but lowered, I stepped back and released her blouse. The dark part of me still wishes I had given in to that anger, just to let her feel a fraction of my pain. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I deserve better than to become what I've always feared. I'm glad I didn't. The breaking point. There I was, standing in my own bedroom, staring at this stranger, wearing my wife's face, surrounded by crushed purple orchids. This was how our 5-year marriage ended, with her blaming me for discovering her infidelity. The woman who used to kiss me goodbye before client meetings was now standing there, accusing me of not scheduling an appointment to catch her affair. This woman changed personas faster than she changed her LinkedIn profile picture. The moment I released her blouse, she suddenly wasn't afraid anymore. No, in all of this, she had now cast herself as the victim. Really? You were going to hit me, she yelled at my back as I turned to leave. This is exactly why I don't love you anymore. You're not even man enough to handle a modern relationship. She kept talking, hurling every possible insult as she followed me down the hallway. After 5 years of marriage, she was trying to make me the villain in this story. It was fascinating how quickly she transitioned from trembling in fear to screaming abuse at the man she'd just accused of almost hitting her. It wasn't until I talked to Liam later that evening that I realized what she wanted. She wanted me to hit her. Can you believe that? She wanted me to lose my cool and give her something she could use against me. She probably had it all mapped out, like one of her marketing strategies. She'd cry about her violent husband, run to the police with her bruised face, and walk away with half my tech company's stock options and monthly alimony payments. The same woman who used to bring me coffee during late-night coding sessions was trying to bait me into domestic violence. The manipulation was almost impressive in a twisted way. I needed to get out of that apartment. The whole place reeked of betrayal. Their mixed perfume and cologne lingered in our bedroom, on our sheets, in the air. The same bed where I'd comforted her through project deadline panic attacks now smelled like another man. I grabbed my keys and laptop and went for a drive. Found myself at my friend Liam's house. Thank God for Liam. One look at my face, and he pulled out the whiskey. Liam knew exactly what I was in for because he'd been through his own tech industry divorce. He laid it out straight. I needed a lawyer, and I needed one yesterday. The legal reality. Here's the worst part, though. While I was pulling in 6 figures as a project manager, Evelyn's consulting business was more smoke and mirrors than actual income. She was essentially pretending to have a thriving career while burning through our savings on client development. That meant in our state, I might have to pay this dishonest woman alimony every month. The same woman who had just slept with her client might drain my finances. That's the bizarre thing about the legal system. Even when you're the one who's cheated on, you still have to pay for it. But Liam, being the sharp guy that he is, pointed out that adultery could affect the alimony calculations. Document everything, he advised. Every email, every text message, every receipt. Anything that proves she was cheating. Finally, some good news in this program. Maybe I wouldn't have to fund her future client meetings after all. My mind was still reeling. That morning, I'd been a happy husband, planning a surprise for my wife. Now I was sitting in my friend's living room, Googling divorce attorneys, while trying to keep my stomach from turning every time I thought about what I'd just witnessed. There was no way I was trying to fix this relationship. I might have been foolish enough to buy expensive flowers for a cheating wife, but I'm not foolish enough to forgive this. The text messages. My phone started exploding while I was sitting in Liam's apartment, trying to process everything. Since Evelyn couldn't control me in person, she apparently decided to try to tear me down through text messages. And holy hell, the things this woman sent me are unbelievable. Just last week, this woman had texted me, "Love you, babe," with cute little heart emojis after a successful client presentation. Now she was sending me detailed comparisons between her lover's manhood and mine. She actually took the time to explicitly describe, in writing, how much better he was in bed than me, how I could never satisfy her innovative needs, how she had spent years pretending to be with me, like she was writing a Yelp review for a failed startup. The digital evidence. She sent me an entire novel detailing all my sexual shortcomings, complete with performance reviews and metrics, like some twisted end-of-year employee evaluation. After I caught her cheating in our own bed, she actually had the audacity to tell me her startup guy had disrupted her expectations for intimacy, as if I'd want her back. The best part? She was angry that I had compromised her growth opportunity. Can you believe that? Like I should have given them privacy or something. She was mad at me for interfering with her affair. She accused me of being selfish because I had ruined her chance at optimizing her relationship potential by coming home early without notice. This woman was performing mental gymnastics that would have impressed Silicon Valley VCs. Thank God Liam was there because he immediately told me to screenshot everything. He kept shouting, "Document, document, document," like it was a product launch checklist. And he was absolutely right. Not even a minute after she finished her epic rant about her fantastic startup lover and my alleged deficiencies, I watched those little message bubbles start disappearing, one by one. I guess she finally realized that when your husband makes 3 times what you do and divorce is imminent, it might not be the best business strategy to put your admission of infidelity in writing. After erasing all the evidence of her affair, she resorted to the same old insults, calling me every name in the Silicon Valley dictionary. But she made sure to keep her afternoon activities out of the conversation. The speed at which she shifted from bragging about her affair to pretending it never happened was actually quite impressive. It was like watching someone try to scrub their digital footprint after a PR disaster. As those texts vanished in real time. Unfortunately for her, she didn't know I had screenshots of every single message. She might have deleted the texts, but she couldn't delete the truth, or the images that were now safely backed up to my cloud storage, ready to show a divorce judge why I shouldn't have to pay this woman any alimony. The legal process. That night, Liam proved to be a gold mine of divorce information. He walked me through every step I needed to take, from gathering evidence to protecting my financial accounts. Between shots of whiskey that night, I barely slept, just mentally reliving everything while scrolling through reviews of divorce attorneys on my phone. The next 2 weeks were a blur of meetings with different lawyers. Some looked like they'd barely passed the bar exam, while others wanted retainers that cost more than my annual Arabus budget. Finally, I found Adrian, who didn't require me to liquidate my stock options to pay him, and who seemed to genuinely care about my case. Adrian actually smiled when I showed him the screenshots of Evelyn's texting meltdown and the photos of our bedroom scene. While he was pragmatic, he acknowledged we had a strong case to reduce or possibly eliminate alimony. He warned me that judges in our state tend to favor the lower earning spouse, regardless of why the marriage ended. Still, he promised to fight for me, like it's a unicorn startup's IPO. To be honest, just having someone knowledgeable and supportive in my corner was the first positive development since this nightmare began. Serving papers. Then came the exciting part. Serving Evelyn with divorce papers. Want to know what this woman did? For 3 weeks, she avoided the server by changing her schedule, pretending she wasn't home, and even having her mother tell the server she'd relocated to Silicon Valley. When the server finally caught her leaving a SoulCycle class, probably the first actual exercise she'd done in months, she took the full 30 days allowed by law to respond. A pure spite move. She knew I was paying Adrian by the hour, so she knew exactly what she was doing, dragging everything out as long as possible to drain my resources, like a competitor trying to outlast a startup's runway. The legal battle. Once the proceedings actually started, Evelyn became the queen of petty tactics. She claimed she couldn't find bank statements I knew she had, forgot to bring required documentation to meetings, was late for every appointment, and insisted on a detailed inventory of every item in the apartment, down to the last charging cable. These ridiculous settlement offers kept coming from her lawyer. She wanted half my stock options and the apartment, plus alimony. This woman, who I caught cheating on me, was asking for half of my retirement funds, which was completely absurd. The most infuriating part? She was still seeing her startup guy, even though we'd been separated for months by this point. Yeah, mutual friends in the tech community told me about that. She was living her best life while trying to make mine as miserable as possible. Whenever we were close to reaching an agreement, she would suddenly change her mind or make new demands. She seemed to take perverse joy in watching me waste money on legal fees. I could almost hear her laughing all the way to her lover's Tesla. Moving on. While Evelyn was working overtime to prolong the divorce and drain my finances, I attempted to re-enter the dating scene. I went through a phase of hooking up with random women from dating apps, which isn't my proudest moment. Downloaded all the usual suspects: Bumble, Hinge, the works. Had a few one-night stands, trying to convince myself this was what moving on looked like. But each morning after felt worse than the last. Every meaningless hookup reminded me why I declined Evelyn's suggestion of an open relationship. That lifestyle just wasn't for me. I've always been the kind of guy who wants a real connection, inside jokes, and waking up next to the same person every morning. The whole casual dating scene left me feeling empty, like I was trying to debug code with the wrong solution. The bookstore meeting. Between work, divorce paperwork, and failed dating app matches, I needed something to keep my mind occupied. Before Evelyn came along, I used to read constantly, stay up all night, finishing a book, that kind of thing, until life became consumed with 60-hour work weeks and monthly shouting matches. So one Saturday, instead of swiping through dating apps or monitoring my liar's emails, I decided to visit this small independent bookstore downtown. You know the type. Local artwork on the walls, creaking hardwood floors, and that wonderful old book smell. Standing in the Sky Feast section, I felt completely lost, because obviously the entire genre had evolved while I was busy trying to save my marriage. I'm talking about these massive series, books longer than technical documentation, and titles I couldn't even pronounce. The woman next to me actually laughed. Not mockingly, just this gentle, delighted sound at my obviously overwhelmed expression as I stared at the shelves. When I turned to look at her, she was holding this enormous book that could have doubled as a laptop stand, with this warm smile on her face. "Need some help navigating the new releases?" she asked. I admitted I had no idea where to start, but was looking for good science fiction. Next thing I knew, we were sitting in these comfortable chairs in the corner while she gave me a crash course in modern sci-fi. She was passionate about it too. Her eyes lit up when she talked about her favorite series, and she had this adorable habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she got excited about a particular author. A simple book recommendation turned into a 2-hour conversation covering everything from modern space operas to classic Asimov. I told her about my college favorites, and she told me about this parallel universe series she loved. For the first time in months, I had a genuine conversation that didn't involve lawyers, divorce documents, or awkward app-based small talk. For those 2 hours, I forgot all about Evelyn and the chaos. I was just a guy talking books with a beautiful woman who actually seemed interested in what I had to say. A new beginning. I finally worked up the courage to ask for her number after our impromptu book club meeting. Something about her made me feel like a junior developer at his first hackathon, my hands actually shaking as I input her number into my phone. Pretty pathetic for a 34-year-old project manager. I left that bookstore with her number, her recommendation for The Three-Body Problem, and the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. Reading back through our text exchange that evening, it struck me how different it felt from all those meaningless dating app conversations. There was something authentic here. I knew I had to tell her about my ongoing divorce on our first real date. I'd mentally debugged this conversation a dozen times, expecting her to run when I mentioned my crazy soon-to-be ex-wife. But Autumn, yes, that's her name, just took a sip of her wine and said, "Thanks for being honest. We all have our legacy code to deal with." Just like that. No judgment, no weird looks, no awkward attempts to change the subject. She even joked that at least she wouldn't have to wonder if a guy she was dating was secretly married if he was going through a divorce. The contrast. Autumn was everything Evelyn wasn't. Where Evelyn would scream during conflicts, Autumn would calmly discuss issues like we were in a productive sprint retrospective. Autumn freely gave the attention Evelyn demanded. She showed genuine interest in my work, remembered small details about topics I'd mentioned weeks ago, and never once made me feel guilty about going through a divorce. For the first time in years, I felt heard and seen. The best part? I wasn't even trying to find her when we met. Just two people connecting over science fiction in a bookstore. No apps or forced networking events required. You can't algorithm your way into this kind of connection. The new relationship. After 5 months of dating Autumn, I was completely smitten. She made me feel comfortable in every way, sending me book recommendations during project meetings, leaving little notes in the sci-fi novels she lent me, and actually listening when I talked about my day. Meanwhile, Evelyn kept throwing up roadblock after roadblock in the divorce process. Whenever I thought we were close to finishing, she'd come up with some new way to drag things out. Missing signatures, contested assets, suddenly remembered joint accounts, you name it. She tried every trick in the project management handbook. Autumn was incredibly patient through all of this. She never complained about dating a technically married man or pressured me about the divorce timeline. She'd just support me through the annoying calls with Adrian and remind me that this too would pass. I was finally starting to feel content again. Naturally, that's exactly when everything went completely sideways. The attack. I had just spent a perfect Saturday with Autumn, shopping and having lunch at this cute little cafe near her apartment. We were walking back to her car in the mall parking lot. The sun was setting, and we were discussing what movie to watch that evening. One moment, I'm listening to her laugh about something, and the next, my entire life erupts into chaos. I heard it before I saw it. An engine roaring like someone had floored the accelerator. As I turned toward the sound, I saw a car speeding straight at us, primarily aimed at Autumn. Pure instinct made me grab her arm to pull her away, but I wasn't fast enough. The car clipped her leg, and I watched in horror as it just broke. I'll never forget the sound of her bone cracking or her scream. As she fell onto the pavement, I tried to shield her body with mine. I was about to dial 911 when I heard tires squealing again. The car, after hitting another vehicle, was backing up with its engine still roaring. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This driver was trying to hit us again. Autumn's leg was bent at this horrific angle, and she was crying in pain. I knew if I didn't move her, we'd both die. With my heart pounding so hard, I thought it might explode. I grabbed her under the arms and dragged her between two parked cars. She cried out in pain with every movement, but I had to keep going. The car slammed into the vehicles we were hiding between as it charged forward again. The impact was so violent, it set off every car alarm in the vicinity. By now, people were running toward us from all directions, phones out. The entire parking lot was chaos. People shouting, car alarms blaring, Autumn sobbing beside me. The confrontation in the parking lot. I swear time stopped when the driver's door opened. There was Evelyn, stepping out of the car like she was arriving for a client meeting. She looked exactly like she had at our last lawyer's appointment, but now there was this wild look in her eyes I'd never seen before. Her hair perfectly styled as usual, wearing the same designer blazer she used to wear to consulting meetings. She looked like she hadn't just attempted to murder two people in broad daylight. The contrast between her polished appearance and what she'd just done made it even more terrifying. This was my soon-to-be ex-wife, who had apparently been stalking us and decided that if she couldn't have me, she'd rather see me dead. This wasn't some drunk driver or random road rage incident. She had deliberately targeted Autumn, who had never done anything except make me happy again. Something snapped inside me when I heard Autumn's whimpers of pain and saw her broken leg. She had just tried to murder an innocent woman whose only crime was dating her soon-to-be ex-husband. This was no longer just about Evelyn and me. I held Autumn close, trying to keep her calm, while keeping one eye on Evelyn, terrified she might have a weapon or try to finish what she started. It was like watching someone transform into a monster right in front of me. When Evelyn stepped out of that car, I hadn't been married to this woman for 5 years. This wasn't even the woman I'd caught cheating in our bed. This was something else entirely. A rage-filled entity wearing my ex-wife's face. The reality of what had just happened hit me hard. Evelyn had actually made a calculated, planned attempt to kill us. Not in a heat-of-the-moment thing. She must have followed us, waited for the right moment, and then made a conscious decision to run us down in broad daylight. When she started walking toward us, her heels clicking on the pavement like some twisted countdown, I honestly thought she was going to try to finish what the car hadn't managed. Her face was completely blank, except for her eyes, which were burning with a hatred I'd never seen, not even during our worst arguments about project deadlines. The aftermath of the attack. Thankfully, a man who looked like a security engineer tackled her before she could reach us. Even after being restrained, she kept trying to push forward like some angry algorithm stuck in an infinite loop. While I was trying to comfort Autumn and assess her injuries, I couldn't take my eyes off Evelyn. This woman had slept next to me for 5 years, sat across from me at countless project planning sessions, and discussed starting a family with me. Now she was here, having just tried to kill my girlfriend and me in a mall parking lot. My mind couldn't process the disconnect between those two versions of her. How do you handle it when someone you once loved enough to marry tries to kill you? The police arrived with sirens blaring, followed by an ambulance. As they loaded Autumn into it, she was in excruciating pain but tried to smile at me, to let me know she was okay. While the officers were handcuffing her, Evelyn completely lost it. "It's only been a year, and you're already showcasing your MVP," she screamed at full volume. Everyone around us flinched at the pure venom in her voice. She had just attempted murder in front of dozens of witnesses, and in her deranged mind, she was somehow the victim. That's when I realized how completely insane it all was. I had literally walked in on this woman cheating on me, in our bed, with a client. She was the one who violated our marriage vows, blamed me for catching her, and spitefully prolonged our divorce. Now she was being arrested for attempted murder while screaming about betrayal. Olympic-level mental gymnastics. She was acting like I was the bad guy for moving on after she destroyed our marriage through infidelity. The aftermath processing. I stood there in that crowded parking lot, watching my ex-wife being stuffed into the back of a police car while still screaming tech industry jargon with my girlfriend's blood on my hands from where I'd tried to help her. My wife, ex-wife, who used to make me breakfast during sprint deadlines and send me cute messages while I was in meetings, had just tried to murder 2 people in cold blood. What's the most absurd part? She actually seemed to think she was justified. Like I was the villain in this story because I caught her cheating. Hospital recovery. Every time I visited Autumn in the hospital, I kept expecting her to tell me it was over. Who could blame her? 5 months into dating a guy, his psychotic soon-to-be ex-wife tries to use her as a hood ornament. Most people don't sign up for that kind of legacy issue. She had her leg in this massive cast and months of physical therapy ahead of her, all because she had the misfortune of dating me. When I told her who the driver was, I couldn't even look her in the eye. Just stared at the hospital floor, waiting for the inevitable, "I can't handle this" response. Instead, Autumn just reached for my hand and said, "Well, at least she'll have plenty of time to work on her anger management in prison." She actually joked about it. This woman was trying to comfort me while she lay in a hospital bed with pins in her leg because of my ex-wife's murder attempt. When I asked if she was sure she wanted to stay with me after everything, she gave me this look like I'd just suggested rewriting our codebase in COBOL. You really think I'm going to let her win? I'm going to walk again, perfectly fine, and she's going to prison. I'd say I'm winning this sprint. The legal prosecution. The district attorney's office was obsessed with this case. Turns out the whole incident was captured in crystal clear HD by multiple security cameras. The footage was chilling. You could see Evelyn's car first circling the parking lot like a predator searching for prey. Then she parked and watched us for a while. According to the DAW, this was crucial because it demonstrated premeditation. She didn't just happen to see us and lose it. Instead, she tracked us, waited for the perfect moment, and made a calculated attempt to kill Autumn before aiming straight at us. They had footage of her passing our area at least 3 times. The security video looked like something from a horror movie. You could see how she waited until we were in the perfect position, then just floored it the moment she spotted us. Everything was captured on camera. The first impact that broke Autumn's leg. Evelyn backing up for another attempt. Me pulling Autumn between the cars. According to the DAW, it was one of the clearest attempted murder cases she'd ever seen. No room for heat of passion or temporary insanity defenses. This was cold-blooded, premeditated attempted murder caught on multiple cameras from different angles. The most bizarre part? The video shows her checking her makeup in the rearview mirror before trying to kill us. She wasn't preparing for a double homicide. She was touching up her lipstick like she was heading to a business meeting. The prosecutor said this was another nail in her coffin, showing she was fully aware and in control of her actions. She wasn't a woman who lost her temper out of jealousy. She methodically planned to kill her ex-husband's new girlfriend and made sure her makeup was perfect for her eventual mugshot. Because apparently planning to kill. The trial. The entire divorce process was put on hold for months. I juggled between the courthouse, the hospital where Autumn was recovering, and my job. My manager was understanding at first, but I could tell his patience was wearing thin after I had to leave work for legal matters for the 10th time. My ex-wife couldn't handle that I moved on after she cheated, so I was living in the courthouse, burning through PTO like crazy, and spending hours with prosecutors. The trial itself was like watching a masterclass in getting yourself imprisoned. The prosecutors had an ever-growing mountain of evidence. First came the security cameras, showing Evelyn trying to murder Autumn from 6 different angles. Then came the parade of witnesses. Seemed like everyone in that parking lot had stayed to testify. The soccer mom who saw the whole thing while carrying groceries. The teenager who caught it all on his phone. The retired police officer who grabbed Evelyn before she could finish what she started. Their stories all confirmed the same thing. This wasn't an accident. This was an attempted murder in broad daylight. Autumn looked amazing on the stand, even with her legs still in a cast. She recounted her experience of seeing the car coming, the pain of her leg breaking, and the terror of knowing Evelyn was coming back for another try, all without breaking down. I had to testify too, telling the jury about the threatening texts, the divorce drama, and how I discovered Evelyn cheating. The whole time, Evelyn sat there dabbing tissues at her eyes and trying to look remorseful. The jury saw right through it all. The verdict: guilty on all counts, reckless endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder. The sentencing. But things got frustrating at the sentencing. She was sentenced to 12 years for premeditated attempted murder, but with good behavior, she could get out much sooner. The judge bought her whole "I'm so sorry, I wasn't thinking clearly" performance. She cried as she described how she lost control and deeply regretted her actions. I sat there thinking about how she checked her makeup before trying to kill us. The prosecutors explained it to me. First-time offender, no prior record, showed remorse, etc. But really, 12 years? She made a calculated attempt to kill 2 people. She planned it, stalked us, and if that bystander hadn't stopped her, she would have tried a 3rd time. Autumn could have died. I could have died. And if Evelyn behaves well in prison, she might be out in less than 10 years. One of those quirks of the legal system. You can try to kill someone in front of dozens of witnesses and still get a shorter sentence than someone caught with drugs. The final resolution. What really got me, though? Evelyn actually had the audacity to turn to us during sentencing and apologize, saying she wasn't herself that day. As if there's ever a right time to try to kill people in a parking lot. Autumn refused to give her the satisfaction of a response, just stared her down the whole time. While 12 years wasn't what we'd hoped for, it was at least 12 years without having to look over our shoulder in parking lots. Funny how a judge's perspective on alimony can be significantly altered by a murder attempt. After the criminal trial, the divorce proceedings suddenly became very straightforward. Evelyn, looking stylish in her orange jumpsuit, had to attend via video link from prison. The judge quickly shut down her lawyer's attempts to fight for my assets. Turns out judges don't feel too sympathetic toward spouses who try to kill their former partner's new companions. The judge actually said, and I quote, "The court isn't in the business of rewarding attempted murderers with alimony." The final outcome: she got exactly what she had before the marriage: her personal belongings, her clothes, and her prison commissary account. Her lawyer's face was priceless as the judge denied every single one of their requests. No claim to the apartment, no alimony, no portion of my stock options. Nothing. She ultimately played herself. After months of dragging out the divorce, making ridiculous demands, and delaying meetings, she might have gotten something in the divorce if she hadn't tried to turn Autumn into a speed bump. Instead, she got divorce papers that essentially said, "You get nothing," and a prison cell. Moving forward. I couldn't stay in that apartment, though. Too many memories of that guy walking in on her. They were always there when I walked through the bedroom door. Autumn and I found this fantastic place closer to downtown. Actually, it's much nicer than my previous apartment, has a great view of the city, and most importantly, the bedroom isn't haunted by the ghost of my cheating ex-wife. Autumn's fully recovered now. You can barely tell her leg was ever broken. She jokes that getting hit by a car was totally worth it since it permanently got rid of my psychotic ex. Dark humor, but whatever gets you through nearly getting killed, right? Sometimes I wonder if I could have prevented all of this. Maybe I should have seen the warning signs when she started picking fights over nothing. Maybe I should have run when she refused to continue couples therapy. But honestly, crazy doesn't always wave a big red flag. Sometimes it hides until it tries to kill your girlfriend in a parking lot. Epilogue. At least I can say I'm truly happy now. Autumn and I are talking about getting married next spring, which feels appropriate since we met over science fiction books and are now living our own wild story with a happy ending. Evelyn will get out eventually, but that's what restraining orders are for. Plus, Autumn's dad, who teaches firearms, made sure we both got concealed carry permits, just in case Evelyn decides to try for round 2 after she gets out. If you're going through a divorce or have strange ex-partners, document everything, stay vigilant, and maybe avoid mall parking lots. And if you're dating someone new after a divorce, maybe run a background check first. Or at least make sure they're not the type to try to murder someone over a breakup. Thanks for reading my bizarre story. I'm looking forward to reading all your comments, especially the car-related ones. Autumn's personal favorite is, I guess your ex-wife really drove that relationship into the ground. Oh, and I still go to the bookstore with Autumn. No, we don't park in that mall anymore.